What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the specs of the HTC One M8 to the Sony Xperia Z2. So the HTC One M8 has just been announced today after numerous leaks, and it's going to be going head to head with the competition out there, which includes the Sony Xperia Z2, the flagship from Sony. But how do these two compare? What's different? Well, do hit that thumbs up button and let's find out in this head to head spec comparison. So starting off with the size differences, the Sony Xperia Z2 does come in slightly larger in terms of the height and the width compared to the HTC One M8. You're looking at roughly about 0.4mm in terms of the height and 1.9mm in terms of the width, so slightly larger, but it does come in thinner, so it's 1.2mm thinner compared to the HTC One M8. Now the larger height and width of the Sony Xperia Z2 are because of the larger screen size. You've got a 5.2-inch screen versus a 5-inch screen on the HTC M8, so you've got a slightly larger screen on the Sony Xperia Z2. Resolution wise, they're exactly the same, 1920 by 1080, so you've got the same resolution, full HD 1080p, but because of the differences in screen size, you've got slight differences in terms of the PPI. You've got roughly 441 PPI pixel density on the HTC One M8. On the Sony Xperia Z2, you've got roughly about 424 PPI pixel density. Now in terms of the differences in weight, both of these are very similar. The Sony Xperia Z2 coming in 3 grams more compared to the HTC One M8. Now the build, both of these have a premium build. The Sony Xperia Z2 has an aluminium frame with glass panels on the front and the back, shatterproof and scratch resistant glass panels. The HTC One M8 has a Aluminium Unibody design, and it's 90% metal compared to the 70% metal of the HTC One M7. So a very nice here. You've got a very premium brushed metal look. Both of these have the premium builds here. The Sony Xperia Z2 does have the advantage of IP58 water and dust resistance, so you're not going to have a problem getting a bit of a splash on it or anything. The HTC One M8 is not officially certified for any water or dust resistance. Now moving on to the internals, both of these have a Snapdragon 801 quad-core processor, 2.3 GHz, so the same clock speed as well. Adreno 330 GPU, so very similar here. You're going to be expecting very similar performance. Benchmarks will tell us more differences, but expect a very high performance from both of these. In terms of RAM, you've got 2 GB on the HTC One M8. The Sony Xperia Z2 has 3 GB of RAM, so you do have a bit of an advantage here. 3 GB of RAM, better for multitasking. Now the storage versions available, you've got 16 and 32 on the HTC One M8. On the Sony Xperia Z2, you've only got 16 GB, but both of these are expandable, so you've got micro SD card slots which let you expand the storage by up to 128 GB, so that's a big advantage on both of these devices here. Now moving on to the cameras, you've got big differences in terms of the cameras. The Sony Xperia Z2 has a 20.7 megapixel camera, so very high resolution. Now if you compare that to the HTC One M8, you've got 4 megapixel camera, but these are ultra pixels, so they're larger pixels compared to your standard smartphone cameras, and they let in a lot more light. So HTC have gone with the same concept that they had with their previous camera with 4 megapixels, but the resolution difference is absolutely massive. You've got a much higher resolution on the Sony Xperia Z2, so it will come down to your personal preference. Are megapixels important to you, or is low light performance more important? Now the other interesting thing about the HTC One M8 is that it's got 2 cameras at the back. It's got a dual camera. One of the cameras is going to be measuring depth information, which will allow you to refocus the image at a later point, which is a very nice feature. And you can also add lots of effects and things. The Sony Xperia Z2 does have a background defocus. It's software based, however, so you can blur out the background at a later point, but this is software based compared to hardware based on the HTC One M8. The flash as well on the HTC One M8 is a dual LED flash similar to the iPhone 5s, so you've got one amber, one white. They fire off in different combinations to give you the best skin tones. Now looking at the video capabilities of both of these smartphones, the Sony Xperia Z2 does have 4K recording, so that's 2160p. That's amazing in terms of resolution. You've also got 1080p at 60 frames a second, as well as 720p at 120 frames a second, which is great for slow motion. The HTC One M8 has 1080p at 30 frames a second, as well as 720p at 60 frames a second. So the Sony Xperia Z2 definitely gets the advantage in terms of video resolution here. The front-facing cameras, you've got 2.2 megapixel front-facing camera on the Sony Xperia Z2. The HTC One M8 has a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, so it's great to see an improvement here on the front-facing camera, having that high resolution for selfies, seeing how popular they are. HTC have incorporated a high megapixel front-facing camera, which is really nice to see. Both of these are capable of filming 1080p HD. Now moving on to some of the additional features that both of these devices offer, the HTC One M8 does have an IR blaster, so you can control your television and things with it. And you've also got HTC BoomSound, so that's the dual frontal stereo speakers with built-in amplifiers. Now in terms of sound, the HTC One, the previous HTC One was one of the best out there, if not the best, in terms of sound quality on a smartphone. The Sony Xperia Z2 also has front-facing speakers. Now we'll have to put these side by side to see which sounds better. The HTC One M8 is supposed to be 25% louder compared to the HTC One M7. Now the operating systems, both of these have Android KitKat 4.4.2, but you've got your skins on top. So HTC has HTC Sense 6 UI and Sony have their own UI on top of Android as well. So you're not going to be getting that stock Android experience. Both of the interfaces have their advantages and disadvantages, but that will come down to personal preference. Now looking at the batteries, the HTC One M8 has a 2600 mAh battery. The Sony Xperia Z2 has a 3200 mAh battery. So you've got a massive battery on the Sony Xperia Z2, and it's really nice to see, considering that the device isn't much heavier and isn't much larger either. They've managed to cram it in a massive 3200 mAh battery. Neither of these are removable. In terms of performance, we will have to put them side by side, but the advantage of the larger battery does go to the Sony Xperia Z2. Both devices also have power saving modes. You've got stamina mode on the Sony Xperia Z2. The HTC One M8 has extreme power saving mode. Now these will really help to get more out of your battery when you really need it. Now looking at the prices and release dates, the Sony Xperia Z2 is available from April 11th, I believe. Now the HTC One M8 is already available. They've announced it and made it available straight away, so you can go and pick it up on a contract. In terms of off-contract prices, you're going to be looking at similar prices, roughly about £600 here in the UK, or between $700 to $750 in the US. These are your standard flagship prices for off-contract devices. So there we have it, the HTC One M8 versus the Sony Xperia Z2. Now both of these are very premium devices. I'd say they are two of the most premium Android smartphones out there at the moment, offering some great specs. Internals are very good on both of these devices. I think the key difference between these two is the cameras. You've got very high resolution here on the Sony Xperia Z2 compared to the lower resolution 4 megapixels on the HTC One M8. Although it does let in more light, and you've got the dual camera feature. That's going to come down to your personal preference. Is 4 megapixels a bit too less for you? But nevertheless, both great devices. Which one would you go for? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, as always, please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more content coming up on here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV. I'll see you next time. If you want to see more regular videos like this one, then be sure to hit the subscribe button, which will be below. If you're on a mobile device, it may be somewhere else. If you want to see my previous related video, then hit the link right here. If you want to stay in touch over Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, then all of the addresses will be there somewhere, as well as direct links in the description below. Okay, if you're still watching, then that means you've not done one of those things, so, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna go downstairs. See. Okay. There isn't really a downstairs. Anyway, so yeah.